Um, what I was going to say about Aunt Gert and Miss Hall and Lillian Jackson, Sister Lillian Jackson, and there are so many that were in the generation before me, and you talk about women who achieved, who did something in their lifetime, and I just feel like you pale in comparison to these really, really great women. When I see Aunt Gert, when I think about Aunt Gert and what she did in that one night, getting the night of terror, getting her family across the Mason-Dixon line before the paddywaggers could stop them and take her father to jail for leaving the land, and the terror they felt, at making this drive to get back here to Wayne. And then going on to work through the civil rights movement and be actively a part of it and be there, really, really pushing forward. Miss Hall moving from the school over here, what's now Hungerford. What was it, still Hungerford's, or what do they call it now?
It's just
I don't know, but the school, and then, going through Miss Hall through the integration phase and teaching, and I mean, just seeing how they developed at a time when being black was really, really bad. It was bad when Kevin and I came up, but it was much worse for the generation before us, much, much worse. And and yet they achieved anyway. These are women who went to college. How'd they go to college? In an area where, you were just poor, and yet their mothers scrubbed floors, whatever they had to do in order for their children to succeed. Today, you can't get these mothers to stop drinking long enough to worry about their children succeeding.
Yep.
That's
incredible.
It is incredible. When you look at the sacrifices that were made for these generations, and these children have no idea, no clue. And they look at, they'll watch a story like Roots, or watch a movie and say, it's just a movie. They don't understand that this happened, that these people, their lives, what you see on TV is only an inkling of what really, really went on.
That's Hollywood.
Yeah. And I look at my mom's family, where it was a mix. My grandmom, it was a mixed family relationship. You got the siblings passed for white, some lived black, some lived white, depending on what they wanted. And they had to do what they had to do in order to survive. Now today we've got all these mixed marriages and nobody thinks anything of it, but back then you could be killed for it. It was punishable by jail or by death if you were below the Mason-Dixon line, and up here you could go to jail for it. So, it's good to see that people are now accepting each other as just being people, and eventually I hope you'll have people, it'll be so mixed that nobody will care, will be like Brazil. Where there's no racing, just everybody's all blended.
Take me to Brazil.
Oh, well, yeah, that's what it is in Brazil. Of course, Brazil's got a lot of poor people, and there's kids on the street.
Oh, man, it's sad.
It's sad. It's sad.
The favelas. The favelas, shanty towns.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you just look at it that there has to be some harmonization has to occur, but there's going to be a lot of throwaways in the process, and I don't know what this country is going to be in another 50 years. What's going to happen? I also predict that Martin Luther King will be white in 50 years. So each year his picture gets lighter and lighter, and he was my color. So he gets lighter every year, and eventually,
Well, it's society's way of sugarcoating
it,
what
right?
really happened.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, this country and this area in particular, still, they never want to really recognize or even what's the word? I guess just recognize. They don't want to admit the truth. You know what I mean, about the history of what happened. And in the main line, we find that happening a lot, where if there's a black problem, that's one of the things they got to
sweep it under the
You know what I
carpet.
mean? This is the main line. We can't have that.
Yeah.
And that's why now Lower Merion is actually suing the school district for the education practices that was done back then, namely pushing the black kids to
Aside.
and you can do that in Radley, you can do that in Tredyffrin, so for me, I just look at like you're saying, there's going to be a lot of throwaways, and this country's in a lot of trouble if we don't
Yeah.
start embracing each other. We're here all the same, and unfortunately, some people don't see that.
Yeah.
They just don't see it.
And don't understand that we are each other's best friends.
Mhm.
When you're looking globally, if white America, one thing they should understand by now is that, the white Americans and the black Americans, we can trust each other.
Yep. Right, exactly.
We know what that we're here, we're not going to destroy our country. We're not looking to do that. You've got other people, unfortunately, who have a perception of us, and some of it is a good reason. Having traveled, through Europe, and I just look at some of the way we act as Americans is
Yep.
abominable. We go into other
Pompous.
countries. Yeah, we're very pompous and arrogant and
Yep.
demanding. And wait a minute, you're in another.
Entitlement.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
There you go.
You're in another
Yeah.
culture.
Believe it or not, we're actually not the worst tourists in the world.
We are the worst.
No, actually, I studies found
Oh,
the French are.
No, I think the Japanese are, but we'll go back.
Well, they're pretty bad too.
They were pretty bad. They were pretty.
Yeah, but see.
Oh no, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying,
Yeah,
but
for Americans,
Right.
because of how this country was founded.
Right.
See, this country was founded on a blending of
Yeah.
different
Mhm.
peoples
Yeah.
and being accepted. So to walk around because all of a sudden become one of the most powerful nations doesn't mean that
Yeah.
you have that entitlement. You know what I mean? Like, I know when I go around, I don't care who you are. I respect you as a person.
Yeah.
Your title means nothing to me. Nothing. I respect you. God bless you. I'm glad you did it. But, don't look down upon me because of what you have.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't look down upon others because of what they don't have.
They don't have. Right.
Hey, we're people.
And it's even to the point when you look at how we interact globally.
Yeah.
We have this, again, like you said, Christian, a sense of entitlement, and we go into another country with our concept of what democracy is, and that is not what other countries, that's not their perception. What our problem in the Middle East, we're trying to superimpose our values
Mhm.
on them. Well, that's not their experience. And we need to understand what their experience is before we try to change them. We can't change what we don't understand. And instead of always condemning, we should try to understand it. And I don't know. It's going to be rough because we have all these, and I'm just as biased as anyone else, because when I'm in the airport, I can tell you, I'm waiting for my plane, and I'm checking out everybody who's getting on that plane with me, and I'm thinking, okay, if that one acts up, how can I take him out? I'm sizing him up and figuring out how to take him down if I have to.
The sad part is
But I'm profiling. But I
That's the
am
reality is right
profiling,
now.
and that's not. And when I catch myself doing that, I said, that's not right.
Yeah.
It's not right to look at a person and profile them,
Right.
because that's being done to me. And yet, on the other hand, now since 9/11, you're desensitized
Right.
to the point that everyone is suspect.
Yep.
And I don't know. We've got to find a way to kind of push that down, that tendency.
It's like the
Yeah.
initial animal reaction.
Yeah,
and then,
exactly.
And then the rational side kicks
It
in.
has
What
to
are you
kick in.
doing?
What are you doing, right?
Yeah.
That's not the way to think.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, be prepared.
Well, nowadays, you don't
It's
know.
called the be prepared.
You just don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a crazy world. And even when we're out here, I don't go. My church is having a meeting in Philadelphia. It's at in West Philly, our mother church, and they have a meeting, I don't go. I said, because number one, I said, there's no protection. And they said, what do you mean there's no protection? I go into West Philly at night. You got a parking lot that only can hold about maybe 15 cars. And I got to park on the street a couple blocks away. There's no protection for me walking through this neighborhood, you know. Bullets don't know. They don't know me, you know.
Well, you know,
They're very indiscriminate. So
that's the funny part, is that a lot of times white people will act like they're the only ones that are scared.
yeah.
And I'm like, let me tell you something. I'm a brother and I've been in the hood, but no, I don't care where, white, black. You know, if I see the madness, and you can tell, you know, what neighborhoods you don't really want to be walking around. I'm
Thank
not,
you.
you know,
I'm
because
not
I'm
going
black,
there.
you know,
Yeah.
don't mean they ain't gonna get me too. You know, no. That's funny you say that, because that's how I am. I've been going in Philly. I'm like.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, no, I'm not going there. You know? You know? And you know, and that comes again, you know, the bias, because you turn on the TV and where are people shooting at each other in
Yeah.
West Philly? You know these indiscriminate, you know, drive-by shootings.
You about that little boy?
Yeah, yeah, it got shot in the butt. Yeah,
I've been hearing all these things about the
Yeah.
corrupt police in Philly.
yeah.
Like I've been hearing about that like all the time.
Well, and that's what I was saying earlier, how, you know, we grew up with the concept that the police were your friends,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and so I don't understand this now attitude that the policeman is somebody you should be afraid of,
Yeah.
you know, that you should fear, and it shouldn't be that way. It still should be that no matter where you are in this country, you should be able to look at the policeman as the person who's going to help you, that's going to be your friend.
See, it
Yeah,
goes back
so-
to the
I don't know,
whole
I'm afraid of
communication.
them.
But it goes
Yeah.
back to communication. Whenever a cop goes something bad, and all of a sudden it's all over the headlines, and it
Yeah.
makes everybody look bad.
Yeah.
You know, when in reality, you're gonna have knuckleheads no matter where you're at. And,
Well, it's even to the point now, I had one direct report. We were coming back from Bridgewater, New Jersey, coming back to Lansdale. And I was driving, and you know where the bridge is on 202 coming across? Well, just before you get to the bridge, that strip, everybody speeds. At any rate, there were like six or seven cars speeding, and I was the last one. Anyway, the policeman, the state, New Jersey State, he flags 6 of us over. He sends the other 5 away, who were all white drivers, and comes to me, who's a black driver. And my passenger, she's white. And Rebecca said, "You're racially profiling her." Rebecca, shut up.
What did he say?
You know? And I said, "You're gonna, no, Rebecca, shut up. Okay, I'll handle this. Okay." You know? She said, "I never saw anybody get racially profiled before, and I'm gonna report this." And yeah, Rebecca, shut up. You know?
Hello.
You don't get it. You know? So I ended up getting a ticket for having a light bulb, you know, which wasn't out anyway. I said, "It's not broken. My turn signal's not broken." But anyway, that's what he gave me a ticket for. But you know, that's the kind of example. She said, if I hadn't been here, I wouldn't have believed it. But seeing what they did with flag, you know, 6 of you over and send the 5 white ones on, and then come to you. And then when he looked over and saw her sitting in the car, then he had to change his tune. But I still don't believe that we should be into believing that the policemen aren't your friends. You know, you should really, you know, they can be arrogant.
Yeah, like I just don't
They
like
really
it when
can be
when they're
arrogant.
mean, when you're polite to them.
Yeah, they can be arrogant. And as a matter of fact, I got stopped one time recently in the last year, and you know, the policeman stopped me and said, you know, he comes with an attitude, and I said, "Well," I said, "I can tell you've had a bad day." You know. And I said, "So tell me, what is it that's gotten you upset?" And he said, "Wait a minute." And I said, "No," I said, "I'm really concerned. You're upset." And I disarmed him, you know, to the point where he had to laugh, and then he'd give me a ticket.
If you make a cop laugh, you're
I
golden.
made him laugh, you know.
You can make a cop laugh. That's a big
It
deal.
doesn't matter what crime you've committed, short of murder, you can get away with it.
Yeah.
That's one thing I've learned.
Yeah. Yeah, and also too, I try to diffuse situations that can be, can become volatile. I'll give you another example. I was at a light in Norristown, and it was one of those long lights. Anyway, I could have turned on, made my right turn, and there was a white man behind me, and he jumped out of his car, and he comes to my window, and he said, you could, you're and I said, you know what? I said, no, I'm no longer married, but my husband, he can call me a bitch, but you don't know me well enough to call me a bitch. And he started laughing. He said, okay. You don't know me well enough to do that. No. But yeah, you can diffuse a situation, just by not buying into it and becoming as aggressive as, the person that's coming at you. You can diffuse it.
That happened last night. I was at the Sixers game. We're all leaving, and I got the kids with me. And I turned, and we were coming out the parking lot. The car's here. I'm here. So I'm up in front, and I start turning. And I, because of these other cars, I had to turn sharper. Well, this other dude either pulled up a little bit, which is what the kids said, but in their mind he didn't. He hit my truck. And that's my F-150. That's my baby. So he hit my truck. I hop out, and the kid's like, "Hey, Mr. Kevin, he's gonna hit your car. He's gonna hit your car." So I get out. And the guy sitting there goes, "Man, dude, you ran into my truck." I said, "Dude, I'm halfway out here. If your front is being hit, you don't in control of that. Don't try and put that on me." But, no, well, we can call the cops. Well, let's call the cops. His girlfriend on the passenger side, leaning out. "I see you hit him." I said, "Wait, hold up. I'm not even talking to you." You know what I mean? I'm talking to the driver of the car. It has nothing to do with you.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, and number one, they're white, I'm black. New York Knicks fans. I'm a Sixer fan. We just lost, so I ain't happy anyway. So you know what I mean. But anyway, that was the diffusing. You know what I mean? It's like, dude. Then we looked. I said, look, it really is a compound. It's not bad. No dents. You know what I mean? Same thing with yours. And I said, as far as you young lady, look, it's not that I don't care, but understand something. You got traffic, you got people. There's no reason for you to come across the thing yelling out the window at me. You don't know me. And she goes, "Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. I'm such a butt." I said, "No, you're not. You're fine. You're just concerned." "Well, I know, but at least you're not like some of them other guys that would have been yelling and cursing at me." I was like, now see, you don't know, back in the day. Back in the day, boy, your boyfriend might have been knocked out, and I might have drugged you out. But it was funny. It was funny that I'm hearing this diffusing, and there's no doubt. I got 3 kids with me, and if I had said anything, or if he had said anything, so I think he kind of tripped when I got out the car.
Yeah.
But I wasn't coming out angrily. I was just like, what the heck happened? Because I'm always looking. But apparently when I started turning, he pulled up a little bit more.
And hit.
But anyway, it was definitely confusing, so. But I got
No.
Are we have done? Because
Me
Yeah,
too.
I think we're done.
Really
Me
great
too,
information.
because guess what?
well,
yeah,
I'm looking out for you. I don't really have nothing to do. No, I'm joking. But I'm semi-serious. She needs.
Oh yeah.
No.
But I do got
now,
stuff I
now
got
it's
to do
getting
now.
dark too.
Oh yeah.
Now I'm a danger to myself on the road.
Exactly. I'm gonna follow you for a little bit and then let you go.
Well, thank you guys for